Hello, welcome to this edition of the Hospitality Interviews. I'm Barry Clark from Dunedin Consultancy, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Robin Williams from Hotel Synergies, who's going to be joining us for today's session, looking particularly at the financial and control aspects of managing your hotel operation right now in the current lockdown situation and as we come out into whatever the new normal is going to look like. So Robin, hello, very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Robin, why don't you take just a quick opportunity to introduce yourself and what you do for the industry at Hotel Synergies.
Hi there, Barry. Well, thank you very much for the interview. So Hotel Synergies basically provides the financial control support for independent hotels that they may not think they can afford. We charge them for the nitty-gritty stuff and make sure they have controls in on a day-to-day basis of revenue, costs, payroll, everything, and that their admin staff are doing most of the admin work, which saves them money from that point of view and gives them a better quality service from a finance point of view.
Great stuff, very valuable service indeed, Robin. So as we've been getting to know each other recently, Robin, we've quite similar backgrounds in the industry. We've been working in the industry for about the same amount of time. And I think what's particularly relevant right now is that means you and I we've worked through some economic storms in the past. You know, I can think back of the banking crisis, Black Monday before that. You know, we've kind of been through these crises before. But I don't know about you, this one just feels a bit different. What do you think are the learnings that we can take from our previous experience to help other people in the industry to weather the coming financial storm?
A very good question, Barry. Most of us will remember the impact of swine fever, the 2008 crash, but I think this crisis is the worst we've seen for many years. Luckily, the government has put together some good packages to help businesses pull through. That said, the thing to remember before taking on any debt, however desperate you are, is do a cash flow plan. Think it through with a pessimistic view and make sure you will be able to pay the repayments. It may sound a little hard, but if business is going to fail, it will fail after this crisis, and it may be better to accept that before creating a bigger rod to beat yourself with. Sorry about that.
No, it's a really good point you make, Robin, that if a business is really distressed and in severe financial difficulty, you and I have both dealt with businesses that are in that position, and there always reaches a point when actually you can't pull it back, when it's too late. And I know with helping some owners in that situation, it's a really difficult final decision to make, that actually this has gone too far, and we need to accept the reality of what's going on. So what people are saying to me right now, you know, it's the immediate loss of current and future income that's severely impacting their cash flow right now. I mean, what would you consider as the three key points to implement to take stock of the current cash position in your hotel business?
Well, obviously, the first point, which most probably have already started action, is what funding is available. Depending on the size of the company, there are various facilities, some being more or less easy to claim, such as furlough scheme, and others more difficult, like the guaranteed loans. Take advantage of the ones that are free first, as they will need to be included in a cash flow. That brings me on to the cash flow. Take a clear look at what you owe, what you are owed, and what you need to pay out. What are accessed easily. Your short-term cash flow will be bleak, but putting all the figures down clearly will help to see full impact. The cash flow then needs to include various scenarios for the end of a lockdown, because we don't know how long the government will keep us in social distancing. Remember that a cash flow should be based on basic statistics, not hot air. Income needs to at least include occupancy estimates, average rates, and average spends. If you have events, these need to be on a separate line because they will be the last to materialize. All these will influence the total revenue, and any institutional finance institute will want to see how you come up with the figures. Likewise, the expense. Any decent set of financial reports should give clear KPIs based on revenues generated. It is important to flex the variable costs expected with the revenue expected, especially the biggies like food, cost of sales, and payroll. Unfortunately, we don't know if furlough will be continued, so make sure you include everybody in your cash flow at this case. Finally, take your cash flow to at least 24 months. Few businesses will be able to pull back their profit in 12 months. So admitting this will give financiers more confidence in your management skills. Third point, when you have a clear cash flow plan, you can look at the finance you need and how much you can afford. Hopefully they'll be fairly similar. When looking for funding, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Try your bank, but also look at the financial brokers that are around. They often have access to other investors who have a better appetite for the hospitality industry.
Some really good advice there, Robin. I think for most people that I'm talking to right now, it's the uncertainty, it's the lack of any clarity around when are we likely to see the lockdown situation relax. And I know from a project that I'm trying to work on at the moment, the realities of trying to create a cash flow and projections for a new business right now, it's, you know, where do you start? Where do you take your start point? Because we don't know when this business is going to be able to open. And this is opening a business that's currently closed. So I really feel for people that are in these circumstances right now. So we've spoken about cash flow, and as we all know, cash flow is absolutely king for every business. But as well as cash flow, you know, hoteliers are going to be feeling pressure on their purchase ledger, on their payroll, and on the sales ledger, collecting those outstanding balances. So if we look at each of those three elements in turn, how would you advise hoteliers to manage their outgoings in the short term and what's due to come in as well?
Okay, Larry, so the hardest first, purchase ledger. The golden rule is keep talking. Do not close communications with suppliers because that will only make them more nervous. Anyone you talk to will know what is happening and they will be grateful of any news, even if it's not positive. By now, all businesses should have sent out a letter to all their suppliers making the situation clear, i.e. we're closed and there's very short supply of money. Yes, it sounds crude, but put nicely, it will put them in a clear state of mind. The letter should make it clear you want to pay them, that just you will do as soon as you have the money. Most will come back with a thank you and asking for continued updates, which is what you should be giving. There will be those who come back with demands, usually either the big or the stupid. The big guys think they can push you around, but if you talk to them firmly, they know that the government is putting in measures to stop forced liquidation. And if you go down, they won't get paid anyway. Again, it's all about communication. As for the stupid, well, there's little we can do about that. Just remember, don't fall into the trap of paying the one who shouts loudest first. 9 times out of 10, that money will be better use paying for something else. Next on the list, payroll. Luckily, as said earlier, the government have come through with this one with their retention scheme. If you can't afford to top up the 20%, don't worry about it. Any team member faced with furlough or no money will be happy to take the 80%. And if you're really concerned about your team, maybe nice gesture to buy some food, put together food parcels, send it out to them, and they'll just love that. If you can afford to keep staff on normal payroll, then start with the salespeople and then maintenance. While there are no clients, your two greatest concerns are maintaining your image in the marketplace, ready for when this is over, and maintaining your property in good condition so it's ready to see those clients immediately. If you can afford it, get your maintenance team to get all those maintenance jobs and renovation jobs sorted, which aren't that easy to do when you've got guests in the hotel. And don't forget to flush the water system to prevent for Legionnaire's disease. It should be every 2 weeks as far as legislation states. Getting back to furlough, make sure somebody with a knowledge of payroll does the calculations, preferably best to run the payroll each month in advance, so you know exactly what you need to claim. I've done furlough for 3 hotels. As long as the figures are in hand, it's simple. Money comes through within a week, and HMRC are being really professional about this. When you get the money, make sure you use it to pay the staff. If you misuse it, it could come back to bite you. And be also clear on another point. They're paying you gross plus NI and pensions. that means they're funding you to do your PAY obligation each month. So do it. Otherwise, it may come back to bite you as well. I know it's tempting to use it for other reasons, but it may cause a penalty later. Next one, sales ledger. If you did have debts to collect when lockdown came, they should all have been chased by now. No, I'm not saying paid. Let's face it, a lot of the companies are in the same boat as you. Don't be the stupid one, be the understanding, regularly interested one. That way, when they have the money, they're more likely to pay you first. And you really should know by now who of your clients are actually got the money because they're still working over lockdown. Try to get the money off them first. Finally, there is another biggie, deposit ledgers and voucher ledger, if you have them. These may make or break your business at this moment. You're going to have to, a lot of cancellations, possibly even big weddings, and these people will be emotional. But again, they know what's going on. If you strike up the right tone with them, most will be understanding and many will allow you to bump the booking to a later date. If you're unsure when they take the stay or when they want to do their booking, move everything to a fixed date in June next year. Send them a confirmation email explaining that then they can contact you with the correct dates they want. This will mean you'll have all the bookings on the same arrival date and they'll be easier to track for future clearing. The client will be confident their deposit is controlled and you won't have to check them in, so it won't cause faults with your statistics on the PMS. Having them all in the same arrival date will mean you can see clearly how many you have to deal with. And when September comes around, if they haven't called you yet, you can go through the list and see if you can get them to stay over the quiet winter period with the odd enticement. This will bring vital food and beverage revenue in those months when you've got greater capacity. I also mentioned the voucher ledger. If you haven't got one, you should have one. All through this period, you should be pushing those vouchers. It will not only help your cash flow, it's also publicity. And once they have the voucher, they will come eventually. When they do, you can increase their spend with some good upselling. And if they don't come, which is true of about 6% of all vouchers, then that's profit for you once the voucher expires. Just make sure you put a decent expiry date on them.
Brilliant. Some really practical advice there, Robin. I think that'll be very helpful for everyone. Now, I'd just like to come back to one of the points that you mentioned there in particular. We spoke about deposits and cancellations, and really, really sensible advice from you. Plan ahead, try to reschedule for your customers. I think we all know that the reality in some cases that's not going to be practical or possible. And particularly in the wedding and events side of business, in many cases, the prospect of big cash refunds at the time when cash flow is really compromised is really challenging, if not impossible in many cases. In that situation where there's a demand for cash refunds, but the cash flow just isn't there in the business, what would be your advice to owners and controllers to try and manage through that situation?
Well, Barry, as I've said, cancellations are always stressful, and having your wedding cancelled can be a biggie. That is why it's important to be sympathetic. Remember, they are probably short of cash as well, but I'll assure them that if they want a refund, they will get it when you can afford to pay. Unfortunately, contrary to what some may think, deposits are not kept safe in a golden bank account, and that money will have probably been invested in the business long ago. If they don't go for a future date straight away, try offering something to sweeten the experience. Perhaps you could throw in some rooms for free when the event finally happens, or cover some costs that they hadn't already covered, making it worth the while them sticking with you. And as a last-ditch attempt, you could plead understanding and offer them a discount to be refunded in return for postponing the event. Offering to pay them back a few grand now, which will be discounted from the big day, could help them save you having to fork out a lot more, which you just haven't got at this moment in time. Yep. One word of warning with these and any debts: never play the "it will ruin me" card with any debt, because if they feel for one moment that you're at risk, they'll just get more persistent.
Very, very good advice. Very good advice. I think we've all seen in the media some poorly handled examples where owners have gone exactly down that this is going to ruin me, I don't have the money road. And as you very sensibly point out, that actually just makes the situation worse. It doesn't help at all. I think the key of what's coming up with a lot of what you're saying, Robin, is that ongoing, honest and transparent communication. And that's one of the big takeaways I'm taking from this. So, you know, it looks increasingly likely that some kind of social distancing is going to have to become part of the new normal standard practice for running our businesses, certainly in the short term when we're able to reopen. Now, it's also equally evident that for hotels, restaurants, bars, that's going to be really challenging. You know, reopening a hotel or a restaurant, we know it's just not a case of unlocking the doors and turning the lights on. There's a lot more involved to it. So, I mean, from a financing control perspective, from your area of expertise, how would you advise owners to plan for that reopening? And I'm thinking in terms of things like cash, stock, purchasing, maintaining that continuity with suppliers, and then, of course, the outstanding debt and the business creditworthiness. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, you're quite right. It's not just a case of pushing a few buttons, but a lot will have to do with how you've handled yourself during lockdown. For example, systems. Regardless of there being no business, you should have somebody going through the motions on your PMS, changing booking dates, processing refunds, running night audits. Nothing could be worse than opening the door after shutdown and having to run 60-day ends and all other admin involved before you can actually do business. If you furloughed all your receptionists but still have sales staff on duty, train them to do it. It may be an eye-opener for them. Then next most important is your suppliers. You won't be able to service your guests if you can't buy supplies. And God forbid you didn't pay your credit card commission bill, because you won't be taking any cash when we get back to business. People won't want to risk the infection. So if you really haven't been able to keep all your suppliers happy, you should be looking for substitutes before you get the big moment. No doubt how much risk is involved, there will always be a supplier willing to serve you. Even if it's some form of prepaid account or higher prices, they could help you get through the first few months until you can stabilize your purchasing power. Worst case scenario could be scrounging together some cash and keeping it safe for cash in hand payments for the first couple of weeks. This may even be the solution to continue with your regular suppliers. Keeping you happy in return for cash on delivery will make sure you have them in mind when the money comes in, and they know that. Soon as you can see things are getting better, agree payment plans with your suppliers. Even if it's long term, they'll be happy to know the situation so they control their cash flow, and then make sure you stick to those plans. As regards supplies, before you get to the big day, you should have gone through all your stock items and disposed of all that which is out of date. There could be nothing worse than a visit from the EHO on day 2 and being closed down because the fridge is full of out-of-date produce. Next, you need to look at your menus. It is unlikely you'll be able to run the same menu as when you closed. There may be supply issues, items that aren't profitable on low sales. You'll probably be doing room service, and some items just may not work for that. So plan your suitable menu for when you're actually opening up. Now you've got that clean slate and that suitable menu, do a shopping list so that you're ready for when you open. Just basic on the basics, and don't go over the top. You won't need 20 steaks in the fridge, and that cash could buy you a lot of veg. When you know your date for opening, make the relevant purchases and then do a stock take. Sounds weird before opening, but under normal operation, you have a certain fixed stock value that's fairly stable. If you want to be controlling your chef's GP from day one, you can't afford to be having arguments about not having the basics. If sales grows, the chef can spend more money. That's the way it always works. If the business grows quickly, he'll soon be up to his old past stock and you'll have maintained profits and cash flow. And finally, and most importantly, personnel. If we are lucky and the furlough is extended beyond the end of lockdown, you will need to be clear with yourself and your team about who returns first. Make a short list of the different levels of business. Choose the most productive and the best customer service first. They will boost your weeks of business. And remember, you won't be able to re-furlough team members, so better have a few busy days until you can guarantee a more stable workflow. Any hotel these days should have a rota system which links to their actual sales and forecast sales. They can see their payroll costs and vital KPIs on a daily basis. I use detailed forecasting tool based on years of experience, and I know a couple of reasonably priced payroll software suppliers that allow me to import those sales on a daily basis to their rotas control, so payroll planning is always up to date with the business. For those that can't afford that sort of software, I have my own system that works as well for smaller businesses. I remember when I started in hotel finance, everybody waited for month end, had a few shouts, a bit of a cry, gave a few orders, and then that was it. These days, business is too tight to wait for the figures. Hotels need systems and processes in place for daily reporting of revenue and productivity, controls for purchasing to ensure there are no surprises at the end of the month. And finally, be careful with your purchases. Don't let the client suffer. If the client suffers, they feel they don't get value for money, they won't return. And don't let your team suffer either, because if they're not on your side, they might as well be against you and not offering the exceptional degree of service that needs to put you apart in these months. Even after the many closures that are going to occur in this crisis, there will still be a high level of competition out there. And you need to grab your share of the market and hold on to it.
Robin, really sensible, practical advice there as always. Thank you so much for your time today to join us, to share your thoughts and your experience. I well imagine, Robin, that some of our audience watching this will probably want to contact you and continue the conversation on. What's the best way for people to make contact with you?
Well, we've got a website, hotelsynergies.com, and they can call me personally on 07956 880 665.
Robin, that's great. I'll bid you farewell for now. Thanks ever so much for joining us today. Some really valuable input. It just goes to show the importance at all times, but I think especially now, of having really solid, experienced, knowledgeable financial advice on the practical day-to-day running of your business. And you know, that's where I certainly learned over my operational days. You know, having a really smart, experienced financial controller was invaluable in your business. Robin, thanks ever so much, and we'll see you again soon.